Fig trees in the low desert grow very well, a little too well if you're growing them in containers. Today I'm going to be working on pruning the tops of my fig trees and then also the roots. So I'm going to be root pruning for the first time. Keep in mind, I've never done this before, but I know it's necessary because right now they are in 15-gallon containers and they've already outgrown them. And I want to do it right now because some of them are starting to wake up. But before I do that, I'm actually going to need some soil, so we're going to mix that out first. My recipe for soil uses no measurements because I hate numbers. But in here, I have some peat moss. You can use coconut coir if you have access to it, and the funds because that is really expensive. And where I live, I can only find small bags, but I need a lot of soil. I'm gonna add some compost, sand, and perlite. The reason I'm adding perlite is because this is gonna help absorb water, so it's gonna help with moisture retention, but also with aeration, so that the roots can actually breathe even though it's a large container of soil. So let's just toss some in there. I'm also adding some compost. Hello, Miss Mika Sandra. Hello, Mr. Eden. Are you guys gonna help me?
If you serious, give me tuna and I'll think about it.
I want the texture to be really nice and loose and fluffy, so let's do it, baby. This looks great. Now that I'm done, I need to bring this all the way to the other side of the yard. Let's do it. Oh God. Oh God. No, that's not gonna work. Oh shoot. Oh, please go through. Oh. I should have just stayed on the other side of the yard because it's so sunny right here. Before I start pruning anything, I need to make sure that my pruners are both clean and sharp. I'm gonna take this little sharpener right here and I'm gonna go to town. Sharp tools are really important when it comes to pruning. That way you get the cleanest cuts possible. And it's better to do that from the very beginning. Otherwise, it's gonna be a struggle. And today I'm gonna be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 trees. So I wanna make sure that my tools are as sharp as possible to make it easier for me. Once it's sharp, I'm gonna sanitize it with the world's worst spray bottle. This is just some alcohol, and I'm gonna be sanitizing my pruners in between every single tree, just a few spritz. The reason for that is I don't wanna spread any disease from one tree to another. I mean, truthfully, I don't think there's anything wrong with these trees, but just to be on the safe side, I wanna make sure my pruners are clean every single time. Why is Mr. Eden right there?
Give me tuna, lady.
Sir. So this is the first tree I'm gonna work on. Let's see here. This says it's a Chicago Hardy. This tree was really nice and productive last year. The figs were really small though, but extremely sweet and had a lot of berry flavor, which is my favorite. One thing to keep in mind with fig trees is on the older wood, you'll get some production. The figs on that are gonna be called a breva crop. but you're not gonna get as many. They might not be quite as large and they might not be quite as tasty. But on all the new growth, you're gonna get a lot more production. You're gonna get nicer figs, bigger figs, and those are gonna be called the main crop. So don't be scared to prune these guys down, because trust me, they're gonna explode with growth no matter what. And this way it's gonna be easier to reach the fruit as well. So I kind of wanna keep them about this tall. The reason for that is I want a little bit more privacy in this pathway. Last year, I cut them down maybe to about here, I would say. And then all of this is brand new growth, and that's on top of me trimming them constantly. I think I'm gonna prune them to about right here. Right there. But then you see this part of the wood is really thick. That would be really difficult for me to cut with my pruners. So let me go get the loppers. And again, no matter which tool I'm using, I'm always gonna make sure to sharpen them. Oh, okay, that's really sharp. I just cut my finger. Hold on. So do as I say, not as I do. Please wear gloves. And also, reminder to pick up Band-Aids, because my kids are obsessed with them and they kind of used all of them. Next, I'm gonna sanitize this as well. Now, which tree was I pruning? This guy? And there you have it. For this next tree, I think I'm gonna prune it right here, because I want them to be a similar height. That way, there's a little bit uniformity when these trees start leafing out again. And then I wanna bring you in closer to show you what comes out of the tree. There's a little bit of liquid pooling on the cuts I just made, and you wanna make sure not to touch that because it will irritate your skin pretty badly. Wearing gloves is very important whenever you're doing this. Next, I'm gonna take my tree, I'm gonna leave the tag on right there, and I'm gonna start the root pruning process. Which again, I'm not entirely sure how I'm gonna do this. I've never done it before. I'm a little bit nervous, but it's okay. This is the bottom of the tree, right here. And as you can see, the roots look pretty good, but the entire form of the pot stays together because it already has started becoming root bound. They kind of just start circling around. Over time, what'll happen is if something becomes root bound like that and you let it go on for too long, the tree could just choke itself out, which I don't want to happen. But also, because it gets so hot here in the low desert, if these roots are right up against the sides of the container, when we have 100+ days, all those roots are gonna feel all of that heat and you're gonna see it in the tree. Plus the containers start drying out so much faster because it's mostly roots, it's not a whole lot of soil left. So what I'm gonna do first is remove the mulch on top, and then I'm gonna start cutting. You're probably gonna feel bad when you do this, but remember that the tree is still asleep right now, so it won't notice too much versus doing it when it's nice and awake. There you go. Then I'm gonna go through one more time, and I'm gonna get these pieces right here. So you can see that makes a huge difference right now. Then I'm gonna lay it down and I'm gonna cut a good chunk off the bottom. And here's what the tree looks like now. And then all of this, I'm not just gonna throw away, I'm actually gonna use it to fill other containers. It's gonna break down and build the soil. But for this tree, I'm gonna replenish the rest of the container with some fresh soil. I'm gonna add some of its remains back in there, just at the very bottom, to sort of plug up the hole while allowing the water to drain through. And then I'm gonna fill up the rest with some fresh potting soil. I'm gonna put my tree in to see if it's at the right height. And I think I'm gonna add just a few more inches. Okay, there we go. I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm gonna fill up the rest of the container. I'm just trying to get rid of any air pockets. This tree's done now. Something else that you can do is make sure that it's perfectly straight. If I rotate this one, you can see it kind of goes at an angle. That's because I have them up against the wall. So I like to grow mine like this. I kind of train them to curve a little bit towards the wall. That way it kind of gives an illusion that they might be espaliered, even though technically they're not. Okay, let me bring it over there now. Okay. Now I want to protect the feeder roots on the top of the tree because I don't want the soil to dry out too fast. So I'm gonna add some shredded wood mulch. This is where the leaves come in handy too. So if you've been collecting leaves over the winter time, you can top it with those as well. There you go, you just need a light layer. Oh, what's that? And then I'm gonna reattach my drip. This is just a drip line that has 6-inch emitters, and I coil it around the tree to make sure that it gets even water distribution for the entire pot. I've tried a bunch of different ways for watering my container trees, and this is the one that works the best for me, because with other ones I would get areas I would get really soaked and other areas that would stay dry. And like this, it gets a nice slow watering to help it stay nice and happy during the summer months. And that's basically it. Now I just need to repeat this process 9 more times. I'm finally done. It took me a couple hours. I'm exhausted. So I didn't finish putting the mulch down on top of the fig trees because I remembered that I actually need to go through and fertilize them before adding the mulch. Otherwise, in a few days, I'm gonna have to remove all of the mulch again 10 times and then apply fertilizer and then add the mulch on top. So it's gonna take way longer. I'd rather just skip it for now. But the last thing I'm gonna do today is just clean up all of this mess right here. Ow. So I'm just gonna start tossing all of this on top of the wheelbarrow, and I'm gonna fill some other containers with it. I'm so tired. I'll show you when I'm done. I just feel exhausted right now. It took me about 4 to 5 hours to do all the root pruning, all the soil mixing, all the repotting, and all of the cleaning. But I'm done. Today's March 26th, and this is what the fig trees look like. Every single one of them is awake now, and some are even producing figs. I'll show you right now. But look how beautiful. Some of them are just barely starting to leaf out, but others are well on their way. And then if we peek inside, there's already fruit on them. I also want to point out the base so you can see that there's a bunch of shoots coming out of the bottom of the tree. And if I were to leave these, they would get massive, but this is a 15-gallon container. So what I like to do is just cut these off. Anytime they start growing in, I cut them off. That way I just leave the trunk and I'll let it fill out towards the bottom, but that way I maintain a nicer shape and I keep the growth a little bit under control. That's basically it. Look at some of these figs. They're way bigger than they were last year. I'm gonna do the same thing. And I mean, look at the roots. I could even just plop this in a container and get another tree. That's the update. All of these trees made it and they're looking a lot more promising than they were last year.